it's Phil Baxter.
Yeah.
I've only just managed to access this meeting because I wasn't sent a passcode or ID, apparently. Although maybe it's just sprung up on my calendar. Sorry about that. I don't know why you can't see my photograph or my picture.
You've got to click a button somewhere.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, start video. Ah, there we are.
Start video.
Okay. Okay.
It's very complex. I normally go to my 2-year-old granddaughter to tell me what to do. Okay.
As you were.
Are we live again?
Yes, we're ready to start the meeting. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and welcome to everybody at the meeting. Particularly like to welcome Councillor Alan Britton, who is replacing Councillor Francis Haig, who has moved on to leadership of the Lib Dem group, and thus her workload's gone up substantially. We thank Francis for all her help in the past. Item 1 is apologies. Do we have any apologies?
No, we've received no apologies.
We have no apologies. Item 2 are the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 18th of June 2020. May I sign these as a correct record? Everybody appears to be in agreement. Thank you very much. And as with all these meetings, I will sign in due course when we meet again. No, I won't sing it. Right. Item 3 is declarations of interest. Do any members have a declaration of interest? There are no declaration of an interest. We now move on to item 4, announcements. And I must say, of course, with regret, as you've all heard, the very long-serving councillor Leonard Crosby passed away this week and will be missed by all of us. And also Councillor Lindsay's wife, Joan, passed away as well. I think probably most of us knew Joan because she often used to come to all the meetings with Gordon Lindsay and sit in the background. I'm sure you will all be thinking of them and wishing them all the very best. I've already said welcome to Councillor Britton. I must mention to him that he, if required, the monitoring officer will provide him with particular training in respect of standards work. One of the training mechanisms we use on-job training. And while at the moment, I suspect he's not up to, Councillor Britton's not up to speed to sit on a complaint subcommittee, which for his information is normally made up of 3 members. We will attach him to a subcommittee, sort of ex officio, where he'll be able to see how it operates. He'll be allowed to ask questions and listen to the debate within the privacy of the subcommittee, but he will not be able to vote until the monitoring officer has him up to the appropriate training level. We, as has been briefly mentioned, we're very sorry to hear that we have a Councillor Paul Beckard is leaving us because he's no longer a parish councillor. And I'd like to take this opportunity of thanking him for all his help and opinions and guidance and suggestions over the past years. It was always very welcomed and very much useful to all of us. I don't know if, Paul, you wanted to say anything?
Chairman, I don't think he's managed to make the meeting as yet.
Oh, hasn't he? Oh, sorry, I thought. Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, I think if we can then just record the fact that he's left us, and we do thank him for all his service. Thank you very much. Item, where are we up to? That was 4. Item 5, the Local Government Social Care Ombudsman Annual Review 2019-2020. To receive a report from the Head of Customer Service, and would you like to shoot now?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As you said, it's the annual results letter from the Ombudsman for 1920. You'll see in the report that we had 15 complaints made to the Ombudsman about us. That's a slight increase from the 13 we received last year. Of those 15 complaints, 7 were closed without investigation. 2 were referred back to us as the complainant hadn't been through our complaints process. 4 were not upheld and 2 were upheld. So overall, it's a fairly good set of results, not quite as good as last year. You'll remember we had no complaints upheld at all. But we'll come on to the details of those 2 in due course. You'll see at paragraph 3.4, there's a summary of the complaints that were closed without investigation. I don't intend to go through those, Chair, unless there's any questions from anyone on any of those complaints.
Do any members have any queries? And may I remind members, if they wish to raise a question, please raise your blue hand. Are there any members who wish to ask any comments of the officer on the complaints? Well, I think that probably sums up the situation. As has been said, we had an amazing year last year, and I think at that time as well, we said, you know, well done to all the officers and to the council as a whole. I also say yet again, as I always do, is that nobody should ever be frightened of complaints. On the contrary, always welcome them, because it's so much better if you get it straight to your face, as opposed to reading about it in the County Times or on Twitter or elsewhere. So I think that's another great outcome, and I thank you very much for your report.
Do you want me to go through the 2 upheld complaints in detail, Chair, or are you happy to?
Yes, yes, I do. Thank you. Yep.
Okay, yeah. So it's paragraph 3.7 of the report. The first complaint you'll see in that table there is listed down as being a complaint against planning. But to just briefly summarise that complaint, it came about due to the poor wording of a condition which the investigator from the Ombudsman felt wouldn't stand up in court, although it hadn't actually been tested in court. It's worth pointing out that this complaint was one that stemmed back from 2016, but the Ombudsman used his discretion to investigate anyway because the complainant had been ill for quite some time and wasn't in a position to raise it before then. So since then, we have, or planning have, introduced new standard conditions and have an additional senior officer to check conditions before decisions are made. So that should prevent a similar situation arising again. The second complaint that was upheld was also listed down as planning, but it's probably more of a legal issue, in where the complainant submitted a purchase notice to us, and we required him to provide a plan with that, according to the government guidance, and the Ombudsman disagreed with that and said that we shouldn't have required a plan. But the long and short of it was, he was out of time anyway for his purchase notice, so there was no sort of significant injustice towards the complainant. So although it was upheld, there wasn't really any sort of anything that really mattered to him. He wasn't injusticed in any way. So they're the only 2 that are upheld, Chair.
Good, thank you. Anybody wish to comment on those? Nobody wishes to comment on those. Anything else you want to add before you finalise?
Just one thing, Chair. Due to the pandemic, the Ombudsman did pause investigating complaints that came to them. In fact, they've actually paused receiving complaints. So they're now back up and running. So we'll see what kind of impact that has and whether there's any backlog that will filter through to us. But at the moment, we haven't had any problem.
Yes, well, thank you very much. I say again, I think it reflects well on the council, but I must say again, in a sense, one must almost seek out the complaints, because it's so much better to allow the officers to deal with them quickly and efficiently, and indeed via the Ombudsman, in order to give us all the satisfaction that we're all operating, both officers and members. So thank you very much for that.
Okay, thank you.
Right, we now go on to agenda item 6, standards update, to receive a verbal update from the monitoring officer.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chairman. I think we've got two issues that I would like to cover. Firstly, just to remind members and this committee that we did respond to the Local Government Association consultation on the draft model code of conduct. And it's just to let, I believe the committee were aware, and certainly the chair saw the finished response that we sent in. So that has been received, and that went from this committee, from Horsham District Council. And I think in conclusion, obviously we have discussed this, and it was your feedback and your response that we drafted and submitted. And the main conclusion that came from that was the lack of sanction and having real teeth with regard to what we could do and how we go about dealing with breaches of the code of conduct. What is in place and what will be in place to deter members from breaching the code. And we all felt, and I think, Chair, you will agree, that what we've seen doesn't really go far enough. Obviously, we're aware that there will be changes in the law that will need to take place that will give some of the sanctions that were hinted and talked about at the end of the consultation last year. But as yet, and particularly with COVID in mind, this will be pushed back further. So we will be waiting until we see true sanctions. So we are where we are, and we're still having to determine our decisions with regard to breaches of the code in the same way as we were before. Having said that, I will go on to update the committee with regard to where we've got to since our last committee meeting. I'd like to say that with the pandemic that things and the complaints have slowed down or gone away, but unfortunately I'm not able to say that. And I do have a pile of paperwork sitting on this table that will reflect the work that we have been involved in. COVID hasn't stopped bad behaviour in our district, unfortunately, and I have a pile of cases sitting next to me that our independent person, John, has been through these for us. So really it's an opportunity for me to give you an update with regard to where we've got to. These cases did kind of hang in abeyance while we kind of got to grips with remote meetings and got ourselves up and running as a council, as a legal department and as the monitoring officer. But what we have is we have 13 cases. So in this pile of papers here, there are 13 standard cases. Now, each of these cases have been looked at by the independent person, by John. So thank you for all of his help. He's been busy. He really has been busy during the lockdown and this pandemic situation. We've kept him on his toes, and he's been really, really helpful. So we have, of the 13 cases, each one of those have been seen and the views of John have been sought. It's important to stress, and it's important for this committee to know, I don't think there will be any surprises, but 11 of those cases do go back to one particular parish council. And I think it's important to say for the committee that council is Stenning Parish Council. We have one complaint from Henfield, and we have one from West Grinstead Parish Council. Now, I have sought the views of John, as I've said. I've looked through them and the team. So we have Robert Baxendale, who's here in the meeting. We also have Natasha, who we've met, and she looks at these and works with the standards team. We all work together. And out of the 13 cases, it is my opinion and the team's opinion and the independent person's opinion that none of these justify a full investigation at this time. Now, with that in mind, that means that there are 11 cases that stem from Stenning. And what we have done during the lockdown period and fairly recently, the standards team have met with John, the independent person, and we've discussed a way forward, and we've put together some ideas, and we'd like to put to the committee this morning further. We'd like to seek ideas and advice how we would best deal with this situation. So we have 11 cases that stem from Stenning. We've talked, and it might be that Robert Baxendale wants to give us some feedback, but also John as well, and discuss what we discussed. And what we tried to come up with was a solution as to how we stop this and how we deal with the 11 complaints from Stenning going forward. So we did have some discussion, and we talked about possibly, out of the 11 cases, there are 2 particular members that appear and consistently appear in those cases. There's two names that crop up on a regular basis. So what we are suggesting, and again, it's for the committee to comment and possibly confirm that they're happy for us to go ahead and do this. But we talked about and we discussed speaking to those 2 particular members, whether that's by Zoom or whether that's a remote meeting, or whether we're able to ask them to come in, obviously adhering to social distancing, of course, which whatever it will be easier. But we're suggesting that we get there's 2 members, as I've said, the name crops up regularly, and see if we can speak with them, see if we can offer training, see if there is mediation that can be sought or put together or orchestrated somehow through the council. But what we need to do is we need to find a way to stop the continual complaints. It could be argued that some of them are tit for tat. It could be. Again, we've said that we don't think that a full investigation is necessary. With some of that tit for tat, there is also some true substance with all of them. So something does need to be done. There are conduct issues throughout all of them. Again, the majority of it is on social media, and we've talked about that at length. We've given training with regard to social media. But we are still finding difficulties, and we are still finding problems, and things are happening that should not be happening. But again, we've talked at this committee before, the officer time and the hours of work that looking at and gathering the facts and any evidence and reading the reports and the complaints that come in, again, involving various and numerous officers, also seeking the advice of John. It all takes time, and it's resources of this council that are used and taken up. And it's this one particular parish council, unfortunately. It's important that we highlight it. There's 11 cases of 13. It hasn't stopped, it hasn't gone away. And we need to work out what we're going to do to try and stop this. Now, having said that, again, we're going back to Stenning. We do have, it's not a true formal complaint, but we have received some information with regard to postings on Facebook. And it is important that, and I think it is important that I let the committee know, this is something that, in my opinion, and again, in Robert, my colleague Robert's opinion, is quite sinister. It is on another level that we haven't seen before, and it is very likely that the police will be involved. But again, we don't have that as a true formal complaint. But as the monitoring officer, I've seen it, and it's something that I would, if I can, with the police involvement, try and nip in the bud and try and work out who it is and what it is that's behind it. So that's important to say. I don't know if Rob wants to add anything else. He may be able to highlight and remind us of the discussion that we had and some of the ideas that we thought of. But it's important, I think, for us to kind of glean any ideas, any suggestions that you have as a committee. 13 cases, we've got 33 wards, 33 parish councils, I think it is. So 13 cases, 11 of them all going back to this one particular council. It's important to note that this particular council does do a huge amount of good work, but it is just unfortunate that we have this amount of complaints of bad behaviour and breaches of the code, allegations, as I say. There is something in all of them, and it's important that we bear that in mind. And it's important that we try and find a way forward, particularly as, you know, we're not in the back in the office as yet, and we are still trying to continue and deal with these cases as best as we can. But we need to almost draw a line in where we are now, and find a way forward, and find a way of working with this particular parish council and improving things and making things better. I think it's also important, and again, Rob may touch on this for me. We've talked about it, and it's a long time coming. We are putting together a new procedure, a more streamlined procedure, and something that will help us deal with these cases quicker and better. And we are even further than we were before. So we're close, and certainly we're Rob and I and Natasha, we're hoping that next time we meet, we'll be able to show it off to you and have your endorsements. So thank you, Chair. I don't know again if Robert does want to comment, and again, maybe John as well. Thank you.
Before I call in Robert and John, it struck me that I better say, for the benefit of our new member, that and all of us, let's once again remember that this is a meeting in public. It has been recorded and it is a live feed as well. And we're talking of exceptionally sensitive legal matters, and therefore every one of us have got to show appropriate decorum and caution in what we say. And obviously the names of peoples will not be mentioned. A particular parish has been mentioned because it is an exceptionally difficult case, as has been explained. Also, for the benefit of Councillor Britton, who clearly, of course, doesn't know the full procedures, but the philosophy in the Standards Committee is that we receive complaints, and we would like to see most complaints being resolved by the monitoring officer and her team before it has to go up a level to the formation of a three-member subcommittee to actually determine whether there will be whether any action needs to be taken or not. And so a big weight is put onto the monitoring officer to filter out vexatious and frivolous complaints. A new factor that's come in to assist the monitoring officer in the last this year has been that she may call upon the independent person to give an independent and non-biased separate view to her view, in order to get a balance and to assist the monitoring officer in trying to determine at a very early stage, because as our monitoring officers just said, these can be exceptionally time-consuming and expensive matters for the council to take on. Councillor Britton will be quite excited when he sees the size of the bundles for one case. They can be colossal. So that's a wee bit of a background there. The other big problem, which new members will not be probably aware of, is that we used to have some quite good teeth in the Standards Committee regimes in order to bring to the attention of malcontents, proven malcontents, that they're acting inappropriate according to all the protocols of being a councillor. The Pickles changes about 2010, I think it was, resulted in the teeth basically being taken away. And the sort of teeth that had been there before was the ability of the Standards Subcommittee to suspend councillors, both district and parish, if it was proven that they had contravened the protocols. And as the officer said, we unfortunately, this firstly Brexit, and then of course the COVID-19 has delayed us or has delayed the government in bringing in changes to the protocols to give the councils or the Standards Committee the ability to put in place appropriate decisions. Anyway, that's a bit of background, and I think some interesting ideas have come up there. So, Robert, would you like to make a statement or comment?
Yes, indeed. Just like to add, sort of out of the 11 cases for Stenning, that obviously they are all individual cases and need to be dealt with as such. But generally, they're interrelated. They're referring to something that's happened previously. There is, as we said, a bit of tit for tat So even though the cases can be dealt with individually, I think that the solution has got to be as a whole. And as Sharon's mentioned, that what we really need to be looking at is getting individuals in, but also perhaps speaking with the council as a whole. So I think one of the other suggestions is for the monitoring officer, myself, perhaps a councillor from this committee, if they wanted to attend as well, just to speak with them and to try and get the point across, and also to potentially detail the amount of time that they're taking up, because ultimately it's a big drain on resources, especially in these difficult times. So really, it's trying to come up with a plan that's going to deal with it as a whole, as opposed to looking at every matter individually, and coming up with sort of solutions on an individual basis, because they are all interlinked, and generally one case relates to another. I'm not sure if John wants to sort of add to that. The cases themselves on their own, there's something and nothing with them. There's nothing in there that really concerns us on an individual basis with regard to, that really needs to go before the standards committee. There really need to be sort of heavy sanctions. But if you put it all together, it amounts to something. So I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to look at it as a whole, as opposed to individual, and then draw that line, and then give them fair warning. That if things continue, that potentially we will sort of deal with them very, very seriously, and hopefully provide any sanctions that we can, hoping that those sanctions are improved in due course with legislation. I'm not sure if John wants to add any individual detail.
Yes, I will follow on from that. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, I mean, if I go back a year ago when we had the September meeting last year, I think there was 17 cases we had then at the time. And here we are another year on with 13. And the work that Sharon and Robert have done, I'm fully supportive of this, what we call an initial assessment, because I will look at it carefully along, has there been a breach of the code of practice? But it's a lot of tit for tat, and numerous complaints, and they go to pages and pages, go into what old cases and reference to what happened before is being dug up again. And I am also very concerned about one of the cases where there may be some investigation by the police, because if you actually think about the parish councillor recently who was killed, as it were, these things can get very much out of hand, and a lot of this reference is around social media, and you have recordings being taking place and things like that. So it is very difficult to come to grips with looking at the case by case, and it is a lot of work, I can say. So I'm quite supportive that the way that this standards committee is considering, or should consider, meets in my approval, because we've got to get these things turned around to the most efficient way possible for the candidates involved who are making the complaints.
Thank you. If I may also, just for the benefit of Councillor Britton, explain to him what the regime in the standards committee are, because he's possibly wondering who's who. If you look at your standards committee agenda, you'll see all the councillors listed there, all of whom you know, and then you'll see there's co-opted advisory members. So what we have on the Horsham Standards Committee, we actually in fact have four co-opted advisory members from outside the council who have certain experience and expertise and total independence. They don't have voting rights within the committee, but they are called upon to, as you've probably heard now, to submit reports on complaints and to give their views. So the previous speaker, John Donaldson, is an independent person. we should have 2 independent persons and 2 parish council representatives. As you heard earlier on, the one parish councillor representative has had to resign as he's come off the parish council, and we have Philip Baxter here today, who is a independent parish council representative. So the monitoring officer has the good news of having to find a new parish council representative and a second independent person. In the case of the parish council representative, I think I'm correct in saying that is it Halk? They'll nominate somebody.
We will nominate somebody.
Yes.
I think probably if we are asked to do that, and as Vice Chairman of HALC, I can take back your request if that's what
Yes.
you'd like me to do.
Yes. Well, I would the monitoring officer like to comment on that?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, that would be really helpful. Thank you, Philip. Thank you for your
Not quite
offer.
sure what I should say. I'm not quite sure when our next meeting will be, and whether or not it will be on FAS or whether it will be a Zoom meeting like this one. But I will see that it's put on the agenda
Thank you.
for that purpose. Okay.
Well,
Thank you. I'll also confirm in writing. So,
Yeah.
but that's fantastic. Thank you.
Fine.
Yes,
Thank you.
I agree, and I thank Philip very much for that help. In fact, I would say that the monitoring officer will confirm it to make it kosher or legal. But I would ask Philip if he probably could send an email to the chairman and or the committee and just, I mean, I'm sure they know he's resigned, but if they could just highlight he's resigned, and we benefit very muchly from the independent advice of the parish and the independent members, and we would certainly like to see ourselves up to full speed at some stage. So there you are. Sorry about that. That's just to bring Councillor Britton up to speed. I see Councillor Sanson wishes to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure this question is aimed at, but I'll ask both Sharon and Robert. These complaints from this parish council, has it spilled over to accusations about planning applications as yet? Because I'm hearing rumours that it might.
Thank you, Chairman. As far as I'm aware, not yet. No. I think I'm right, aren't I, Rob? I haven't seen any that talk about interests with regard to planning or you know, a prejudicial personal interest or anything of that nature. No.
Thank you.
Right. Are there any other questions from any other members on the matters in underhand at the moment? Yeah, I must mention also for Councillor Britton's enlightenment that about I can't remember now, 4 or 5 years ago, we used to where somebody lodged a complaint to the Standards Committee, if they weren't happy with the decision of the subcommittee of the Standards Committee, they then had the right to appeal. And I won't name any names, but a particular parish council was very, very enthusiastic about lodging complaints. And the net result was that we ran out of trained Standards Committee members to hear all these appeals. Fortunately, the council does have a lot of experienced councillors who've had standards experience in the past and present, and we were able to co-opt some into form subcommittees, because obviously a subcommittee that makes a decision cannot then meet on the same one later. So cut a long story short, I did some costing. When I got up to £100,000 in costs for the council, I said enough's enough, and we arranged to drop the right of appeal. And also for Councillor Britton, sorry about that, just to tell you that the system in fact is very democratic and very fair, because if a complainant does not like the decision of the Horsham subcommittee or Standards Committee, they have a right to go to the Ombudsman. So it's pretty, I think, a pretty good legal system. Right, okay. Monitoring officer, so you basically have made, I think, are you making a proposal there to allow you and Independent and Robert to move to a meeting with 2 of the members of this particular parish council?
Yes, Chairman, that's right. We would be grateful if we had any volunteers, if you thought it would help this committee to be involved and to be party to that meeting. But yes, certainly, that's what we're asking for, a recommendation on how we go about kind of, as Robert said, we obviously aren't, replies and decisions will be made individually to each case, but we're looking at a collective way of moving forward and dealing with this, and allowing the council to know, involving the parish council, that as I said, there are certain members that feature in pretty much all of them. So we want to speak with them first, but also contact and speak to the parish council as a whole, and possibly glean from the parish council as a whole how we go about dealing with this. So we're certainly open for suggestions or a recommendation and approval for us to go ahead and do that. Thank you, Chairman.
So you say you would like members also to be present, and if so, how many members?
Chairman, again, it's a suggestion. It's something that we think might be helpful. You know, I'm the monitoring officer. I'm a solicitor. I'm a lawyer, and Robert the same. And then we have our independent person, and I think sometimes to have a counsellor there, you're open to the same scrutiny yourselves, and you have to abide, and your conduct, you know, you have to adhere to the members' code no differently from them. So I think it can be helpful because you've been there. And you do have some experience. So I personally think it would be helpful. It's volunteers if someone was keen to do that. It might be good to have you yourself as chairman and possibly another member if they feel it would be helpful. I think it personally could be, but again, chairman, it is up to you.
Yeah, I would be happy to attend if you wished it. So there'd be yourself and Robert. Would the independent person be present as well?
If he wanted to be, he's obviously seen fully the detail of all of these cases and has inside knowledge. And as we've said, a lot of them are interrelated. So it could be helpful. It could be helpful. His views have been sought throughout the whole, you know, through the process. So that could be helpful. Yes, Chairman.
John, would you be happy to be a member of this?
Yeah, yes, I would. And I could say that I work for another council, and they have a very similar arrangement, which is this initial assessment.
Okay. How many?
Made up, I might say, of a councillor or on that. So very similar to what Sharon has outlined.
Okay, right. I must say I have every sympathy with the officers on this because, and I've been involved in standards on and off all my life, it seems, and it's really been absolutely very difficult for everybody with the volume of these complaints, and as has been said, the repetition and the old story has been regurgitated. One of the factors that the monitoring officer has highlighted over the past few months has, of course, been the impact of Twitter, Facebook, etc., and the use of it and how that's got in the mix and made things probably perhaps even worse. Anyway, the meeting has now heard a proposal, which I agree with, from the monitoring officer, that the monitoring officer, Robert, the independent person, certainly myself, should arrange to meet with two of the members of this group who are very enthusiastic about complaints, to see if there's a way forward whereby we can resolve it. And I must mention again, particularly for the benefit of Councillor Britton, in the previous protocols before 2010, we did have the ability to suspend councillors for, I think it was up to 6 months, if there was improper conduct, etc. At the moment, all we seem able to do, and it's no fault, of course, of our staff, is to write them a warning letter or saying they've been found guilty of some misconduct and they must come along and have some extra training. But it just doesn't have the teeth that would get the results. So would any other members wish to comment on the proposal?
If I may say,
Yes.
Chairman, thank you. I think it's a very good idea, and I think it's probably at this point the best way to proceed if that helps matters along.
Okay, thank you for that. And that's from an independent parish representative who understands these things very well. Right, we have Councillor van der Kloeg wishes to comment. Diana?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to be clear as to what the purpose of the meeting is. I assume that it wouldn't really be to investigate the complaints because they've already been looked at, and a decision has been made not to pursue them any further. So it's really moving on to the next stage of deciding, you know, what. Well, if I suppose if it's been decided that nothing further needs to be investigated, in a way, the meeting doesn't really follow a formal process of trying to impose sanctions. It's just really a meeting to, I assume, with both of them together, or would it be with each of them individually, to try and mediate between them, to stop them, the vendetta. It seems almost a personal vendetta they have against each other, and to see whether there's some way of stopping that, and explaining to them, you know, the enormous amount of resources and time they're taking up of Horsham District Council in these continual complaints. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of what the nature of the meeting is and whether they'd both be there or individually. And there was also a suggestion of having a meeting with the parish council, and I was just wondering there whether the complaints are confidential. So would it be breaching confidentiality to have a meeting with the parish council? So if perhaps Sharon could, or the chairman could answer those questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I think some good points there. Particularly, will they be met, the two of them at the same time, or one at a time? So could the monitoring officer perhaps clarify those points that Diana's raised?
Thank you, Chairman. There certainly points that do need raising, and it is certainly it's right to raise them. What's personally, I think initially, I think I would prefer to speak to them separately, with a view to putting them potentially together and offering some form of mediation. But it won't be until speaking to them individually, I think, that we would be able to ascertain whether that is likely to be possible. And it would certainly be my intention to tell both of us that that's what we propose to do. And what we are looking for is a way of allowing them to continue to sit on the parish council, but somehow work together, and how we facilitate that, and how we can help with that is something that we may be able to get those answers back from them. Again, I don't know until we, and I think initially speak to them separately. With regard to the parish council, with each of these complaints, obviously, as Councillor van der Kloot has said, they are confidential, and we do keep them confidential. We do, however, let the parish council clerk know that we have complaints. We also know, we let the subject member know of the complaint, obviously, because we also like to get their version of events and have a response. There will be occasions where some of them, where the complainant has asked to be kept anonymous. And obviously depending on the reason and if there is a true justification, we will adhere to that, obviously. But what we propose to do, or what we've talked about, Robert and John, is going to the parish council, explaining, and I don't think we've mentioned it. I've talked about it in general, the amount of time and resource that these complaints have taken, and do take and continue to take. It's a huge workload for us. In fact, it's we have a time recording system. I think I've mentioned this to the committee before, and we time by the minute how much of our time is spent on standards. And Rob could give you the actual figure probably, but it's huge, and it is my biggest role here within the council. And these are parish council complaints. I have 48 members, or very sadly 47, I should say, with the passing of dear Leonard Crosby and his resignation. So we have 47. And luckily, you don't take up very much of my time at all, but the parish councillors do. And I don't want to quote hours because I'll probably get it wrong, but Rob probably could quote hours. And I think the purpose of the meeting, as Councillor van der Kloot has asked with regards to the parish council, would be telling them how much time this has taken. Not giving any detail, but telling the parish council what these complaints are about. They're interlinked. It's tit for tat. There's a general pattern. It's Philip mentioned, or I think John mentioned that we had 17 cases last year. Again, from the same parish council, and they're very, very similar. That you're almost reading exactly the same. It sounds awful to say, but regurgitated complaints. It's of the same social media again, and it's just continuing. And really, we have to try. We might not be successful, but we certainly have to try and do something other than what we've done already. And so the purpose is, and the proposal is, to speak to the members individually, to see if we can get them together to mediate, and then to speak to the parish council as a whole, and tell them how much time is being taken up, and working out how we can try and get them to work together. Whether it means coming off of social media, I don't know, but it seems to be that's where the problems are happening and occurring, and whether we get some further advice or training solely for that parish council, but it has to be worth a shot. So that's the proposal, and that's what we're trying to achieve. And I don't know if Robert would like to come in and add to that, Chairman.
Yes, Chair. Just like to add that the amount of time that it is actually taking, we're talking about big chunks of people's posts. So we're talking about many hours sort of dedicated to dealing with the matters. Basically, because the complaints come in such detail with such information that just working through them takes X amount of time, and you do have to work through them just in case there is something significant in there that we really don't want to miss. So it is a drain on limited resource. So I'd like to sort of highlight that. The other thing is ultimately, these are not necessarily all individual cases against each other. We've mentioned two individuals. They're not necessarily all against each other. There are even members of public in there that have made the complaints, but generally it's regarding the same kind of thing which relates to social media, etc. And we're not saying that they don't warrant further action, but it's not necessarily in these circumstances full-blown individual investigations that lead to individual sanctions. It's felt at this time perhaps the way forward is to try and deal with it in a more general nature.
Thank you. Does that answer the queries raised by Councillor van der Kloot?
Yes, very much so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do any other members wish to raise any points? Oh yes, I see Councillor Newman. Yes, Councillor Newman.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Chairman. What's the parish chairman's role in all this?
He's one of them.
So if I could just answer, unfortunately, again, I have to be careful what I say, because obviously I don't want to name anybody, but the complaints are of a nature that the majority of councillors are involved in some way or other. So what we hope to do is we hope to try and the way that we will hopefully manage to speak to the parish council is involving the clerk, and obviously all of the councillors is what we're hoping for is we'll be able to ask for an invite to one of their meetings and try and get everybody on board. But unfortunately, because of the nature of the complaints, so many of the members are drawn in. As we said, there are two names that come up regularly and consistently, but it's kind of across the board. People are drawn into it. And so it does involve many members. So what we're hoping is that to facilitate it, we will involve the clerks that we regularly are in contact with.
Yeah. I think we must not forget that the monitoring officer has a statutory duty to, in fact, assist the parish councils in legal matters, and particularly standards matter. And the monitoring officer has over the years been dispelling advice to them, and indeed visiting them. So making an actual visit to a parish is not unusual, to attempt to update them or brief them about standards procedure. So that in my opinion is a given. I think that did any other member wish to speak, by the way? I can see no blue hands or no waving hands. What would happen then with the outstanding complaints? I think I'm suspecting we would then just treat them as void, that we're starting from a fresh start if the discussions with the parties involved go well. What was your intention with the outstanding complaints?
Thank you, Chairman. As I think I may have left that detail out, but I think Robert mentioned it. We've looked at all of the cases, we've looked at them individually, and we have a decision on all of them. So replies and responses will go out. They will, not a decision notice as such, but an initial assessment will be made and will be communicated to the subject member and the complainant. Again, we would give advice, and quite often it's if there is something, a thread of a breach or elements of a breach, then we will, again, we will be telling them what we are hoping for, whether that's an apology or training or, again, mediation. So all individual cases will have a reply. So we're not sweeping them under the carpet. But what we want to do is kind of draw a line and try and just address what is going on, and find out, is there something that we can do in order to stop this? Because again, Chairman, you've said in many a meeting over the years that I've been here, this has gone on. It was 7 years when I came, so we must be on 9 years, I think. This has gone on for a very, very long time. And we really need to try and get to the bottom of it. And if this works, or if this is a way of getting closer to that, then I think it's worth a shot. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah. Of course, we actually had to suspend a subcommittee, didn't we? At the start of the pandemic, there was a subcommittee due to sit to investigate 3 of those complaints. So, and because we decided and we felt that to hold subcommittees by Zoom was a bit of a risk, because subcommittees, by the way, sorry, Councillor Britton, subcommittees are held in private behind closed doors, and in the subcommittee you have the monitoring officer and 1 or 2, and sometimes 3 legal officers present, as well as democratic services, and it's treated in a highly confidential manner. And the concern was that to deal with these complaints on Zoom, which can be broken into, might have caused some of it going public. Anyway, we may be wrong, we don't know, but that's the situation. Do any other members wish to raise any points, or does any other officers wish to speak before we decide what to do with this? So nobody else wishes to speak. So what we've got on the table is a proposal, seconded by the monitoring officer, that the monitoring officer, the independent person, Robert, the chairman, and probably 1 other member of the committee, will meet with 2 members of this particular parish. We'll meet them individually with a view to attempting to resolve what the problems are. And if that is satisfactory, the monitoring officer then will resolve the outstanding complaints that she has on her table in the manner she's already described. If all that goes well, and probably even if it doesn't, at some stage the monitoring officer and team, maybe others, I don't know, we'll arrange with the parish clerk down in this parish to go down and have a private but open meeting with them to try to finalize this problem. Have I covered all the bases?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Does the meeting agree with that course of action?
Yeah.
Yes.
Chairman.
Yes. Who wants to speak?
Yes, it's Britain.
Oh, hello, Britain.
Yeah, Chairman, can I make an observation? You know my past.
Yes.
I just am a little bit concerned about the heavy number of individuals going to talk to these other individuals.
Yeah, fair point.
I've never done it. I've never been present when it was done. That interviews were carried out, and that's what they are. They're interviews.
Yeah.
In such a manner.
Yeah.
Normally you have, as well you know, they're entitled to a representative to be present at such an interview. In other words, somebody who is, as far as they are concerned, independent to observe what's going on, as well as the person or persons that we are putting forward to go and discuss the matter with them, each, first of all. Whereas my observation would be that it's far better on a one-to-one basis initially to have a fairly light discussion as to what's gone on and why it's gone on. Because am I right in thinking that we've got 2 individuals who don't like one another?
Yes.
And that this is primarily what the problem is? Because if that's the case, then first and foremost, I would want to know why it's deteriorated to this point. And that can't be, to my mind, achieved by sending down 4 people to talk to 1. It's going to put their back up to start with. They're going to be just a little bit resistant to taking questions from anyone. Now, I know you know this. You must know about that attitude. And that's why I think that at the very most, you're looking at possibly somebody going with the monitoring officer, or, dare I say it, somebody who is independent on this matter going down initially to talk to each individual and find out what their observations are. And then from that, we can put together a common point to go at them with. Now, I know that I'm getting the dialogue wrong, because this has caught me unawares, but I'm thinking back to over 20 years to my days of doing things like this. And quite honestly, as I say, I would want to find out and be on steady ground, firm ground from my perspective before going deeper. And I think in that case, we owe it to them to give them every opportunity to sit and talk one-to-one.
No, I think you make a fair point there. I can see where you're coming from, and of course it does have the sound a bit of a star chamber matter. I think we've got to this position very simply because it's just become absolutely impossible in dealing with these parties. Anyway, what does the monitoring officer think of Councillor Britton's position?
Thank you, Chair. I think it's important, and Robert will pick me up if I'm incorrect, but there are the two names that feature the common theme. They're not necessarily against each other with these complaints. I'm right, aren't I? They're complaints that have come in from all sources. So we've got members of the public, other parish council members, and it's the two names that not necessary. There is an element of them against each other, but that isn't the whole reason at all, actually. And I do completely agree that what you don't want to do is be seen to be one, not allowing someone to have their say, but also going in heavy on somebody. And it is really important. One of the things that we do need to do, and this is one of the reasons that we've suggested speaking to them, is to try and really find out what is going on, what is happening, and what it is that is highlighting them and putting them in the spotlight, if you see what I mean. So it's not that the conversation that we're going to be having with the two individuals isn't solely and wholly about the relationship they have together. But I do understand it is really important that the individual has a chance to, one, be represented, and secondly, to feel that the process is fair. But we would have already made a decision on the actual allegation and the complaint. This is more of a not singling out one complaint or complaints as the committee would have done, assessing it and taking the investigation further. This is a holistic approach, trying to find out what is truly going on, and what we can, if anything, or the parish council, if anything, can do to try and resolve. So it is, as the chairman said, my role is to work with the parish council and to assist and try and get things working and improve things and to train them. And if it's trying to seek out and find out what can be done, rather than point the finger and say, we would have dealt with the individual cases. Those would have been dealt with and a decision would have been made. They would have had feedback before this happens. So my intention is to try and take a holistic approach and just try and work out individually what it is that is going wrong. And Robert might want to add to that. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, Chair. Could I just add, it might not be just restricted to the particular two individuals. It could be that we could speak with anybody at Stenning regarding the whole thing, because it's probably not fair to say that it's just two individuals that are not getting on. I think it's probably fair to say that a lot of half of the parish council are not getting on with the other half of the parish council. I think that's probably what the real problem is, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Councillor Sanson.
Thank you, Chairman. I know the two individuals very, very well, going back many years. I have a creeping suspicion they won't want to be interviewed separately. They want to be interviewed together. Just a thought.
Councillor Burgess had his hand up. Councillor Peter Burgess.
Yeah. The impression I got from the papers that we saw some months ago when we all met as a group was, though there are two individuals clashing, it's more appropriate that there are probably two groups within the council who are not fighting but arguing about different things. So I think the first thing is to find out, why are they arguing? It's over something. Is it planning, or is it the way the council is run, or is it personalities? I think that's the first thing. The second point, as Alan Britton has actually raised, is if I was in the frame, which I might well be one day, then if you came to me and said, and Sharon, we want to talk to you, I would probably say, off, go away, because it's unfair. So I think, one, find out what the nub problem is before you even start this. And I'm damn sure there is something, maybe more than one thing. And then having got that, get somebody from
You're
who is well trained in negotiating, dealing with people, taking them separately with just the one person plus a Sharon or someone else. Otherwise, it will go on. But just to stress again, if you can hit the main problem between these two groups, you're halfway there. Thank you.
Fair comments. The problem is, what is the main problem? In fact, I would, if I said there's a dozen problems, I think I would be underestimating it. It's an endless series of disagreements, ranging from everything under the sun to other things we can't even start to imagine. Councillor van der Kloek, you wish to speak?
Councillor van der Kloek.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Yes, I just wanted to say that the monitoring officer did clarify something which was a little bit unclear before, and that is that I think she has in mind that this process is going to be something which is started clearly after the 11 complaints have been finalised by a written reply. So this is not part of the complaints process as such. And so in seeing these people, one isn't going to be asking them questions with a view to resolving the complaints. And I think she made that quite clear. I'm sure she'll correct me if I've misunderstood that. So it seems to me that what this process is, it's more in the nature of an inquiry after the complaints have been dealt with. And I think it's interesting that it's not just the two individuals that are that we have not named, but we're talking about who are the complainants. There are other people complaining about them. It's not just them complaining about each other. And so there will be, as Councillor Burgess said, quite a number of people that one will want to speak to. And it may be better to focus this on perhaps starting with the parish council to get an idea of what the the issues are before one actually speaks to any people individually. And I would be inclined to go about it in that way. Perhaps the monitoring officer could tell me whether she agrees with that. Thank you.
Sharon?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, again, Councillor van der Kloot, you're absolutely right, and you did. You're correct in saying that it would be like an inquiry afterwards. The purpose of speaking with anyone from the parish council isn't with regard to specific complaints or pulling out any detail of that. Those would have been dealt with, and I agree. It might be a better starting point to go into the parish council initially. And see what comes from that. And it might be then that once we've been in and spoken to the parish council and all members, that it's clear after that who we do need to speak to and who that might be, and how we can mediate if it's mediation that is required. But I'm more than happy to choose that pathway. And again, as it was important for Robert and myself and John to get the committee's confirmation and suggestion and your ideas really. As you said, your councillors yourself. And Councillor Peter Burgess has said what he would and how he would react. And some of you, I can't think of any now, have had me speaking to them with regard to conduct. But that is certainly the way that I do like to work. I like to build relationships with our members and our parish council members. And I, even though they might be difficult conversations, I'm quite happy to have them, and it is part of my role. Some of the conversations I have to have aren't necessarily easy, but in order to for members to do their job and carry out their role, it is part of my role, and I'm more than happy to do that. So I will be guided by yourselves and this committee. And again, that does sound a fair suggestion, that we take that route. We go to the parish council as a whole, and we speak to them, and we see what comes from that. And again, it might be that the clerk can help us. The chairman of the council may be able to help us, and other members might be able to tell us where we need to go next. So again, I'm happy, Chairman, to follow that suggestion and be guided by yourselves.
The only I'm quite happy with that, but the only difficulty with it, as I see, is I think it should be a face-to-face scenario with the full parish council. Mm-hmm. Doing it by Zoom could be awkward. I think, particularly if a few get a bit hot under the collar. I think we've now had this latest edict from the government that only 6 of us can meet together, etc., etc. So I don't know whenever we're going to have another meeting in truly in public, so to speak. So that could delay it. And to get back to the main problem with this whole thing is that we wish to resolve it. And it's the reason why we're probably not resolving, I say yet again, is that we don't have any teeth. If we were able to, if anybody was found guilty of a misdemeanor and we therefore applied the law as it used to be, and as hopefully it will be probably by the end of the year or next year, we could suspend people. And I think that would send a strong signal out to the malcontents that, you can't keep on slagging each other off perpetually when you sit in a council. So, as I say, the problem with it, and I think it is a fair way forward, is when are we going to be able to sit in front of the full parish council to have a nice chat with them? That being the case, we then can go back to Plan A. Now, I thank the members for their learned views on that, and I accept them. And I already mentioned, that I was getting a bit of a feeling, are we setting up a star chamber, It may be that we could go to them and say that the monitoring officer, and perhaps Robert, or the monitoring officer and the independent party can be some nice piece of intro that, there are concerns that there's a few problems in the parish as we look at the large number of complaints letters, and we wish to get to the bottom of it and ask if there are any parish councillors who would like to meet the monitoring officer and say the independent officer to have a chat, and that party could bring an independent person with them, somebody who's not a parish councillor, just to hold in hand is probably not the appropriate way of put it, but to give them comfort. And it won't be a star chamber because there'll be two of them and two of the councils. Just a thought. I don't know, what do the monitoring officer think of that?
I do completely agree with the difficulty of going into the parish council and with regard to meetings. I believe they are, Stenning are using Zoom. I think they've been quite Zoom savvy for a while. It is really unfortunate. One of the jobs on my list was to go out and see the parishes when I first came here, but having to commute from Southampton in the late evenings and the vast district, and being very busy, it hasn't been possible. And there was part of me that was thinking, oh, well, maybe I could make that contact via Zoom meetings because I can be sitting wherever. But as you said, they are clunky. They're not particularly natural. And if you're dealing with difficult situations, it really isn't the best way of going about it. So I do agree with you. It is, with regard to virtual meetings, I did some advice for the Chief Executive last night, and the idea of hybrid meetings and whether they were lawful and whether we were able to do them. And initially the advice was that they weren't lawful. The advice again is changing, and the workplace isn't affected by this latest change of the six people rule as yet anyway. But whether hybrid meetings will happen and then there may be an element of I don't know, making it slightly easier. But that is the problem, and already we've been delayed from when we were due to have a subcommittee. Hence, we're looking into ways forward, and we've done the initial assessments of these 13 cases, not just the 11. So it is really trying to come up with an answer now, if possible. We could speak to the parish council and find out whether they're back into having a meeting. I'm pretty sure they're not. I think it is Zoom only. So it is really suggestions for what we can do now. And that might mean that it is just me with one other person speaking to them. They can, come into the office. Again, I'm happy to be guided by yourselves. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, so I think then, in order to try to move forward on this thing, because a Zoom meeting with the whole parish council, I think, would just be probably a mess. And I'm not being critical of anybody at all in that regard, but Councillor Peter Burgess speaking just now, his froze once or twice, and that happens with the best will in the world to all of us. And then who knows what will happen if emotions start going. It's going to be whereas if you're all physically there, hopefully it could be an easier exercise. So I get back then to that other idea I had, if the monitoring officer plus one other could contact the parish council, explaining, as Sharon can do so well, very nicely, that we are concerned about the large number of complaints emanating, and we wish to get to the bottom of it, or we wish to resolve it, or help them resolve it, and then ask if there are any of the that parish councillors who would like to meet with the monitoring officer +1 to have an informal, off the record, pleasant chat about, how can we help, how can we move forward, and that party can bring there is an expression they always use, not hold hand, but anyway, bring a friend. That sounds like something else on TV, doesn't it? Call a friend. Can bring a nobody's neutral, but a party who can give them a bit of support, and so that it doesn't look like a star chamber. But that party cannot obviously be a member of the parish council, nor a relative, by the way, of the parish councillors, nor a friend of any of the parish councillors, because this thing goes deep, I think. What does the meeting think of that? Anyone wish to speak? Anyone have any other way they would like us to go forward? Yes, Councillor Burgess.
I agree. It would be much better to see the whole parish council, but that can't be done by Zoom. It would be impossible to run, and would probably make things worse, because you'd start getting over talking and arguments.
Yep.
So if we're going to do anything, which I think we should do, having informal chats in our offices, offices, with the monitoring officer +1 other, and I think is really the only way forward, and see whether by doing that over a period of time, until we can have a proper meeting, which is not going to be for some time, at least we are doing something.
Yes.
I can't see any other way around it. But as Alan Britton said, don't make it more than 2, because it will cause all sorts of problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sanson?
Thank you, Chairman. If it would be possible to get some agreement out of the various parties involved not to use social media in this discussion, which I suspect they will quite quickly.
Sorry, in which discussion? In the future discussions?
Yes, how are we going to resolve this ongoing problem with them? They will quickly resolve to go into social media to make their arguments across the parish, as they've done previously.
Yeah, I think that's the point the monitoring officer has been flagging up generally, and I think in the monitoring officer's approach to the parish about the process we wish to see put in place, that there will be there's a strong message that they really should not raise these parish matters on social media. I saw another hand. Was it Councillor Britton? Was it? Yes.
Yeah, I think with the greatest respect, we need to be candid with whomever it is we go and talk to, or they come here to talk to. And initially, it's got to be these 2 individuals, because they seem to be the nub of it. And I think at that time, when we're being candid, we can suggest that under the circumstances, it would be better for all if they did not resort to social media. All the while, we are in a finding mode, so that we can be fair to everybody. If we push it like that, I think there's a reasonable opportunity to get them on our side, and that's what it's got to be. But there we are, and I'm more than willing, if necessary, to be one of those that goes and talks to them, or has them back here to talk to. If only so that I can sit back and observe what their reaction is.
We're back to 2 particular individuals. I was asking from the parish for volunteers to come forward, but
I'd like the whole council to come forward, to be quite honest, because I think in reality that's the only real way it's going to be. We need to find out in depth what is the grievance that's going on and how best we handle it.
Except I think the monitoring office probably got Sundays free, so perhaps could do it then. But you're talking of quite a massive task, But I think I understand that, and I think you've got a point. So there we are. Any other views anybody wishes to raise? So it sounds to me like we're, yes, Councillor van der Kloek.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I understand the difficulties with Zoom, but I do think it's important really to start off with the whole council, and if we have to do it by Zoom, so be it. You have to make the best of it. And I think that the friend that the word you were looking for was maybe Mackenzie friend, for somebody who brings somebody with them. But that's
no.
That would be if we were seeing people as individuals. I think the point about seeing the whole council is that it's less intimidating for individuals, and it flushes people out, and it might be quite lively. I agree, but so be it. That I think is the best way to start, really, to find out what the issues are and to involve the whole council in trying to sort it out, not just hoping that a couple of individuals can resolve it.
I think
that's my feeling.
Yeah, as I said previously, the issues are just numerous. I mean, you know,
Yes.
the number of bundles I've read over the past 9 years, it's just absolutely endless. In fact, it's I mean, I wouldn't want to say it's creative writing, but it's absolutely fascinating. You know, we're all funny people. I'm the funniest of them all. You know, we're all got our foibles and ups and downs, and it's all in the mind of the beholder and perceptions, and you know what I think I'm saying to you, you see it differently, and you know that's the way it unfortunately works. And I agree with Diana. It'd be great if we could have if the monitoring officer could have a meeting with the whole council had been in a room, but I'm sorry, over Zoom I just think it'd be a nightmare. So we get back to what we were originally, I think, eventually starting to get to, which would be the monitoring officer plus one would, and I think instead of picking out two individuals, I do fully accept they may have the answer, but I'm not so sure. But in order to appear fair and not to be discriminating in any way at all, that monitoring officer calls for a couple of the Steyning parish councillors with a friend to come and meet two officers from the council. I mean, I could be there as well, but then you're getting the numbers up again and so on and so forth. The officers certainly are far more neutral than any councillor would probably look. I think the officers' neutrality is undoubted, and that's how it should be, and I hope that the parish council see it as that as well. And therefore, as I say, the monitoring officer plus one to arrange to meet maybe two or three. It depends how it goes, whether you can get the numbers. At least we are, as Councillor Peter Burgess said, we are showing we are attempting to resolve a long outstanding problem. Everybody happy with that way of going forward?
Yeah.
Does the monitoring officer wish to say any final remarks on it?
Thank you, Chairman. I think, as the committee has already acknowledged, it is important that we show we are doing something.
Yes.
And we can't allow this to continue. And it might be that it makes no difference, but it's certainly worth a try. And again, I think if we start off, you know, and speak to two or three individuals, it might be that the only way to address the whole committee and the whole parish council is by Zoom. And again, I'm pretty much up for anything. I will try whatever it takes to try and resolve this issue. I think we need to remember, as Councillor Sampson said, the majority of this is there are two factions, there are two sides here in disagreement. I think that's where this started, and it's just been fueled, and and actually the complaints process has allowed that to generate more angst and more. Again, it's fueled it, unfortunately, and it's been used as a tool and a target to play off both sides. And again, this might help to say, you're not going to use our complaints procedure and our resources to you know, to fire your and add to your game or whatever it is, and we need to try and get to the bottom of that. You know, we're a year on and we've got no further, and whatever it takes, if it means a clunky, horrible Zoom meeting, I'm prepared to do that. But certainly the suggestion to start with myself and one other, speaking to 2 or 3 individuals, and then with a view to bringing in the whole council. But we need to get the message out there. We need to mediate, we need to support. But this council and this standard, the standards procedure and this committee will not and should not be used to fuel and anger the disagreements within this council, and we need to try and resolve that. So anything that helps that, then I'm more than happy to do what I can.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah, it's not just also that we want to be seen to be doing something. We are, as the monitoring officer says, we've got to be doing something. And we mustn't forget there are a lot of good people in Steyning Parish Council who are there, like all those parish councillors, unpaid, who are trying to do their best for their village or town. And it's frustrating for them. And the other factor as well, quite a few, as I certainly have had over the past X years, informal approaches by some of them sometimes to why can't Horsham sort it out, and explain our limitations. And the other big factor is the poor old parish clerk. The parish clerk, they've lost I can't remember now, but they've lost quite a few very good parish clerks because it's just become very difficult for them trying to keep all these members, inverted commas, happy. So any other members wish to have a final say? Right, there's no final say. So what we're going to do is at some stage there will be a meeting with the parish council by the monitoring officer, maybe a couple of others, but that will be when we can all get into a proper room in the future. But in the interim, the proposal is that the monitoring officer plus one, either Robert or the independent person, will approach the parish council and ask for several volunteers to come forward to have an informal, off-the-record chat. The monitoring officer really having explained that we are very concerned by the vast volume of complaints coming from them, not just this year, but over several years. And we feel for the parish council, and we wish to resolve it to turn it into a more happy and productive place. And that the individual coming forward may bring another party with them, but that party cannot be a Steyning parish councillor nor a relative or friend of a Steyning parish councillor. Hopefully somebody neutral, just so you can sit there to I don't like to say to give comfort to the party coming in, but it will certainly show that we have been upfront and genuinely wish to have an open, fair chat, and it's not a star chamber. It's not to criticize anybody or to attack anybody. It's an attempt by us to see if there's not a way forward other than the complaints process to stabilize it. So everybody then agreed with that course of action?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So everybody has agreed with that. So that's that. That's only taken as an hour, as usual. Does the monitoring officer wish to say anything else on the standards update agenda item 8 that we're on?
Thank you, Chairman. Again, the only thing I will say is just to reinforce the procedure that Robert and Natasha and I are in the process of putting together, and hopefully we'll have that for you next time, that you can have a look at how we've changed things and how we've made things hopefully slicker and easier to understand. So that's what we look forward to next time. Thank you, Chairman.
But I will say here as well for the record that we are totally satisfied that the process being taken by the officers and the members in the Standards Committee is appropriate, is in line with the directives from government, and is very similar to what other councils do. And sorry, Alan, but for Alan's information, we did have a judicial review threat from a particular party some time ago. And it was in fact, as I always say, complaints can be very useful. Monitoring officer was given a lot of work to do because of that, but it did allow us to go through all our processes, subcommittees and all the rest, to have a good look, to give us the comfort and to know that what we are doing is correct, by the book, and that we are acting appropriately ourselves. But the volumes of work this is generating. Okay, that's agenda 8. That brings us to agenda 7. I don't know of any urgent business. I don't think there's any urgent business, so I will thereby call the meeting to an end. Again, thank Councillor Britton for coming onto the committee, and he's already made some useful contributions today, as you all have. And take care on your way home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.